Denise gets here, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
We're at 5. Current population.
Just to update everybody, we're just waiting to establish quorum. Even though it's 9 o'clock, we have to establish by population and tonnage. So
Take public comment.
okay, let's get it. We're going to get started. Take public comment. Okay. All right, we're going to call to order the Solid Waste Disposal and Recyclable Materials Processing Authority of Broward County Solid Waste Executive Committee meeting of January 17, 2025. It is 9 o'clock. If you would, please call the roll.
Good morning, everybody. Hear me? Good morning. Chair Ryan.
Here, present.
Vice Chair Furr. Member Shuham. Here. Member Horland.
And Rob.
Member Mateo Bowen.
Here.
Member Mike Ryan. Oh, you already here. Sorry. I got to get that fixed. Member Dunn. Member Rydell.
Here.
Member Mead. He called. He's not going to be here today. Sorry. Member Cagano. Member AJ Ryan. Member Newton. Member Glassman. Member Israel. Member Bright Cruz. Member Geller.
Okay. All right.
Our alternate can count. That gives us 6, and we're over 401.
All right. We have a quorum. If you would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to forego any welcoming comments. We have an enormous agenda today. I'll turn to my co-chair, vice chair, Commissioner Furr. Okay, Furr. Great. Public comment. Jim Lasky. Last is first, right? Next will be Stephanie Pearson. So you can get ready. Nice to see you, Stephanie. Stand behind, so we'll be able to go pretty quickly. Mr. Lasky.
Good morning, everybody. Jim Lasky, Southwood Branch. Morning. You know, I don't know if you guys recall when I first showed up, the place that I explained to you, I was going to investigate the whole problem through economics.
Can everybody hear? Oh, there you go. Okay, now I hear me. All right. I've found out a lot of interesting information when I first came up. There's a lot of technology that's already been developed to the point to where in 2011, okay, and I've got a press release here from our trustee, Waste Management, opened in Pittsburgh, okay, a $40 million recycling plant with all the technology that I've been yelling about. Where are we going? Where's our investigator, our engineers, and all the people that are supposed to be coming up with solutions to this problem? It looks like we've solved the problem in a large corporate way, and they're not the only one. Waste Connections, okay, and Republic Waste are doing the same damn thing. I've told you about state-of-the-art facilities that you could go visit. I believe it's worth a trip now. I don't even know much about corporate governance as far as the Securities and Exchange Commission knows, but you're supposed to put out information based on your earnings, based on the size of the earnings in proportion to the size of your company or your profit. Okay, well, maybe I got that a little bit crazy because I don't do that for a living. I invest for a living. And I got copies if anybody wants to read it while we have this meeting and maybe use it for some questioning later on in the evening. But here we go, if it's okay with you all.
Right, so you can just leave them there. We'll collect them, leave them right here. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lasky. Appreciate it. Stephanie Pearson, followed by Elisa Jones.
Is this
so you
on?
can just come on
Okay.
up so you'll be ready to go. Thank you.
Hi, Stephanie Pearson, League of Women Voters of Broward County, and good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you first for agreeing to have a school board official member, not member, but representative officially at your meetings. Our organization did send a letter of support to the school board in recognition of the importance of doing this and getting students engaged in the effort. I have a few quick technical questions. One is, I've heard the term ex officio mentioned for this and the term liaison. So I don't know legally, or what you're using, but I think we should be consistent because I've seen some letters saying one thing and the other, a technicality. The other thing I've seen is that we're referring to this group as BSWA, but I also saw SWABC.
Right.
So I think we should be
Right.
consistent. So, okay. I took a look at the white papers on the website, and at first glance, it seemed to me that there was it was incomplete in the sense that it did not address the fact that the state, well, first of all, it didn't seem to mention the 2008 state preemption law on plastic wrapping. There are some items that are not included in the preemption, but I just learned this morning that I didn't delve deep enough and that there was a drop down and somehow these things are mentioned. So the other thing to make sure that's in there is that government property and government-sponsored events are not part of this preemption law. In fact, some local governments have banned single-use plastics on their property and at their events. And 22 Broward County did that for styrofoam. So, and some cities have. So this is important that we emphasize this because it would go a long way to educating the public and reducing waste. The other point I want to bring up, and I don't know that this body has the authority to do this, but we should follow Miami-Dade's recent resolution to eliminate single-use plastics at county-owned venues. They're doing it at all their county-owned venues. I'd love to see it in Broward County. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for your letter and your emails. I appreciate it. Thank you. Lisa Jones, followed by Debbie Green. And if the next speakers can come up right behind so that we can We have a huge agenda, so Debbie, if you can, you just come up right behind Ms. Jones, that would be great, and then I'll announce the next one. Ms. Jones.
Good morning. Thank you.
Introduce yourself to everyone.
Yep, Elisa Jones from the Broward Sierra Group. I'm the vice chair. I just have a quick announcement for you all. Thank you for allowing me to be here. We have our 6th annual Broward Sierra Group Earth Day event on March 23rd at the Ann Kolb Nature Center. It's free. All are invited. We have indoor, outdoor activities and featured speakers. And this year, I'm pleased to announce that we have our first panel. Invited to this are Mayor Beam Fur, Commissioner Carol Shuham, Commissioner Melissa P. Dunn, Miami Sierra Club's Stephen Leidner and Noel Cleland, Richard Ramcharitar from Broward Clean Air, and our moderator will be Susan Steinhauser from the Climate Reality Project. The panel will be discussing the future of waste reduction in Broward County and how to manage our waste in our communities and industries, focusing on the most pressing challenges concerning waste disposal and all the alternatives that may be available that are sustainable and changes to our economies and technologies. So please spread the word. We'd love to have you there, and we're very excited to have this panel.
Great. Thanks, Ms. Jones.
Thank you.
All right, Debbie Green, followed by Eric Morset. Erica or Eric? I'm sorry, Eric. Right there, you're fantastic.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I agree with the comments earlier. Just on more not administrative, whatever. This may be something to consider is if these are public meetings, you want to get public input. I don't know if it may be very helpful to be able to maybe speak on certain agenda items when that agenda item comes up, as many other public meetings are, because there's just 2 minutes at the start of a meeting is not enough to cover when you've got an agenda full of items. And I know that one of the items on today's agenda is the presentation of the incinerator in Copenhagen. And I think in regards to that, I don't think it's, while it sounds, lovely and when you read certain parts of it, but I'm sure we'll hear more during the presentation, but I don't know that it's not a proven, those systems and at that technology at that level, there's nothing like that, I don't believe, in the US right now. I would hope that you look to all the other processes of recycling and leaving any new waste to energy or incineration out of this master plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Okay, Mr. Morset, and then Julie Long.
Eric Morset, I'm the Vice Mayor of Pembroke Park. I have had the privilege of living in 5 different countries and see how they deal with garbage, and there are some very interesting solutions, including the one from Copenhagen, a wonderful city that I grew up in, and I can assure the audience it works. Denmark is a very environmentally conscious country, and they measure and control everything, and recycling or incineration is not about just burning things. It's also making electricity and heating houses with the waste cooling. The technology is out there. I know Singapore does the same as Copenhagen. It's popping up everywhere because landfills are not sustainable. We need to look, we're opening a process here. It's not one solution and that's going to go for the next 100 years. We're opening a process where we put in new technologies, and as those technologies develop, we embrace them and get better and better. Of course, we need to recycle. Of course, we need to get all the compostables out of our trash stream, but we cannot continue with the landfill solution, and I don't see any other solution than incineration in a modern world, unfortunately. But it should not stop us from looking at how we can reduce certain kinds of pollutants, particularly single-use plastics. They're highly problematic. There are alternatives to those products. Look at them. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Appreciate that. All right, Julie Long, and then followed by Richard Ramcharatar.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you for making the white papers available on the website. You have the difficult job of organizing this program in a society that does not even want to think about trash, much less pay for it. How to overcome these obstacles. Our waste contains toxins. People are united in caring for their health and the health of their families and children. The American Cancer Society published the 2025 report on cancer. While survival is increasing, there are some very alarming trends in this data. The rate of cancer in young and middle-aged individuals is increasing. Cancer in young women is increasing. The rates of cancer in Native Americans and Black Americans are much higher than the white population and totally unacceptable, and I think are related to environmental problems. While it is difficult to assign causation, there is growing recognition that environmental factors are influencing these statistics. Medical societies and scientists tend to be very conservative in reporting things because they don't want to ever have to issue a retraction. And they're finally starting to say, we think the environment is contributing to this. I think even skeptics would agree that in the interest of public health, action should be taken to decrease exposure to these agents that are shown to be associated with cancer. I ask you to develop and implement as a first priority a public education program that reaches out into our school system, our senior centers, our HOAs, and appears in our media and public places. Second, consider a pay-as-you-throw policy to encourage waste reduction at a household level and change behavior, even if we can't change people's minds. This preserves individual choice and equitably charges those who generate more waste. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you very much. Mr. M. Chartar.
Good morning. I felt it necessary to get up here this morning. I'm suffering from severe vertigo. I was in Cleveland Clinic for the last day, but it's important for me to come here and start this new year off and speak to the executive committee. I want to say that Broward County should not pursue waste to energy as a solution for its waste management needs due to its significant environmental, financial, and social costs. Waste to energy facilities will negatively impact critical ecosystems like the wetlands and the Florida Everglades, including vital water resources in Water Conservation Area 3A, which is home to the Miccosukee Tribe of Indians. The construction and operation of these plants would require billions of taxpayer dollars over the long term, ultimately diverting resources from more sustainable solutions. Instead, the executive committee should prioritize zero waste solutions as outlined by the Zero Waste International Alliance. Zero Waste focuses on reducing and recycling materials, offering an environmentally and economically sustainable path forward without relying on costly and harmful incineration technologies. Additionally, Broward County's 2022 resolution banning single-use plastics should be enforced rigorously, not only on county properties, but also with vendors operating at these sites. This approach will align with the county's sustainability goals, reduce waste, and protect the environment for future generations. Waste to energy is not the answer. Zero waste is the path to a more sustainable Broward County. I would like to invite each and every one of you to attend the Zero Waste Forum that we're hosting at the Ann Cove Nature Center. This will be from March 30th to April 3rd. We'll send information out to the committee so that you have an invitation to come. The other thing I would like to invite you to do is to please, each and every one of you, to take the Introduction to Zero Waste class with Zero Waste USA, January 29th, and I'll send that information out as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. M. Chartar. I hope you feel better. Be careful. All right, that closes public comment. Do I have a motion on approval of the SWA Executive Committee meetings? Motion by Member Shuham. Second by Member Bright Cruz. Any discussion on that item? Call the question and all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes. Executive Director report.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go through this quite quickly because we need to get to the presentations and other things. Financial, I'm say Angela. You're first up. Real quick, I'll have the Cone Resnick with regards to a real quick review of the financial statements. All of you received the financial statements earlier this week. And we'll have any questions that may be available afterwards. Go ahead, Angela.
Good morning, Angela Harms with Cone Resnick. As Todd said, the financials are available. I just want to make note that they should be in, there should be a draft watermark on that. They're not final for December 31. So just so you know that. The total cash balance at the end of the year is $1,506,089 with net assets at $3,276,920. Just taking into account the recent assessment for the current year. And speaking of that assessment, we've received 4 payments. So we need to get some more payments
Right.
coming in on that. That is my report. Any questions?
All right, any questions from the members on the financial update? Mr. Storti, what's the status of the payments?
Well, I'll get out a list later. We have the 4 jurisdictions that paid already. I'll get an update out and let everybody know where we're at.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Next
Thank you,
up,
ma'am. Appreciate it.
School board, you want to go through
Yeah,
that?
school board liaison, per the direction of the board. By the way, let the record reflect that member Ryan, Dunn, and Horland have been here for a while. They weren't at the roll call, but they are here and present. The school board liaison, we have communicated to the chair of the school board a request from the executive committee for them to designate a liaison. I've spoken to the chair. She is going to present in the February meeting the request from this executive committee for a liaison, non-voting member to participate at each of the meetings and to participate overall in this process. Very supportive, and they're prepared to be involved. We also have a representative from one of the sustainability committees, I believe. If you can just stand and you can give everybody your name. Well, thank you for being here, and I hope we see you as well. They are prepared to engage and become a full participant, albeit not voting. Any questions on that? All right. Thanks. Team effort with Mr. Storti. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Storti.
Yes, okay, thank you. Next thing up, website, it's a constant update. We're actually working through the About Me and the update right now with the version 2.0. We'll have more information next month with regards to that update. Next item is the time extension for the SCES contract. Under agreement under Article 3, there's actually a requirement that if they need more time because of various things going on, that it has to be approved, and there's a process here today for the executive committee just to be able to do that. Daniel, you want to come up and say a couple of words with regards to the extension and the need for the extension?
All right, let me turn to Mr. Cole as well. Can you please outline the process here and whether this is an economic impact or simply a time impact?
Right. Under the agreement, under Article 3, there's certain deadlines that SCES was required to make, and if they don't meet those deadlines, they're in breach of the contract. There's a provision that allows for extensions by the authority. The agreement doesn't say that the executive director can do that on his own, so the executive committee will have to approve any extensions. If the extension is needed because of something that the authority did or outside of the control, that's normally the type of extension that would be given. If it's SCES's fault, that's a whole different story. So they will have to explain to you why they want the extension and how much of an extension they need. And then you'll need to have a majority vote to approve that extension.
All right, floor is yours, Daniel.
Okay, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, Council, Executive Director, members of the Executive Committee, thank you. At this time, we're not asking for anything other than an extension on time, as was outlined, consistent with the agreement. There were a number of delays that we believe were outside of our control, starting with the project initiation meeting or kickoff meeting. It required having quorum, so there was a 2-week delay with that. Gathering data was another consideration. And in the interest of this being a transparent and collaborative process, a number of the technical memos have been issued several times requesting feedback. We are making great progress. I will say that at the time that the contract was executed, consistent with the solicitation, there was a very tight time frame. We made certain assumptions in terms of turnaround time on review of documents, and that time frame has not been met, which we don't say with any disfavor or real concern. It's important that we have the feedback not only from the executive committee, but all members of the ILA and from the public. We are planning on having a workshop in a few weeks, and I know that that's an item that we'll be talking about. We believe, and I don't want to speak for the executive director, but in our discussions, we're all going to do better if we have a clear understanding of the technologies that we're looking at, what the trade-offs are, and that we receive policy direction in terms of what scenario or scenarios should be explored further. So again, in an effort for this to be a collaborative and inclusive process, it simply takes more time.
In addition, I think I understand, Daniel, that not just what we should consider, but that which we are taking off the table. That will expedite the processes of analysis as well. So Absolutely. Part of the workshop process will be to have that discussion. What are those things that we just feel from a policy or environmental, financial, economic, whatever the issues are, and that's going to begin to expedite the process as well.
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Storti? And just before I turn it to anybody else, well, I'm going to ask you about how much time. Anything that you take an exception to?
No, I agree with the extension. A lot of this has to do with, and you've all heard, received numerous emails about various tasks and the responses back. And we decided to add and allow, all right, because we wanted to know the information. We wanted to hear from you. This extra time, the turnaround time with regards to the task papers are supposed to be only 5 days. We're out to almost 10 to 15 days probably for each one. That adds time to this process. So, we want to be open. We don't want, and we heard quite clear in the last couple of meetings from a member Bright Cruz that, they want that we need to provide background. We need to provide opportunity to ask questions. Hence the reason for the workshops and the number of the upcoming workshops that we'll have going forward. That all adds time. So instead of trying to just meet a time requirement and get it done by February 28th, which we could have done, but it would not have allowed for any of the interaction, feedback, training, education that we're planning over the next 2 months. So that's really what we're trying to take into account right now.
And from SES perspective, what are you looking for in terms of a time extension?
Well, I will tell you that our current schedule has us completing the work. That's both the master plan and the activities. There are 2 tasks that occur after the delivery of the final master plan. We're looking at early August. What I don't want to do, I'll leave it to you to decide. We can use that date based on the latest schedule update. I believe that there may be more workshops than we've currently contemplated, which would extend the timeline again. For clarity's sake, perhaps we should use the date that we've identified in our latest schedule update, and then let's revisit that as this project progresses.
Okay, my last question, is it imperative that today we address that extension, or are you just informing us that you'll be requesting one?
I would like to extend it today for the simple fact that it's a contract compliance matter.
Okay, Mr. Cole, you agree?
Yes, I think it's best that we do that today. So is it a 5 month, how many month extension are you asking for exactly?
That requires thinking on my feet. I will use a date of August 3rd, which is the completion date. So this is now the 7th schedule update. As we talked about at the project initiation meeting, we would be updating the schedule regularly to reflect reality. That is the date that we have today. I would suggest that we use that date and we come back prior to that date to identify any other deviations from the schedule.
Okay. Is that sufficient clarity for you? We'll have member discussion, but is that sufficient clarity?
I just want to make clear what we're extending to. It's currently February 28th and we're extending to August 3rd. Is that
correct?
Great. That's why I just wanted to make it really clear. So we're extending from February 28th to August 3rd.
Correct.
Okay. To the members. Vice Chair, do you have any?
I think we probably have to. And I think I've seen us be the cause of some of these delays. I mean, all of us, unfortunately. I think we recognize that. I also think that we're coming into the part where we're going to be having our own discussions on some very big elements of this. Trying to rush that is probably not a good idea. And I think that, today's going to be a big day, just hearing a lot of stuff. But that's just one aspect of it. There's so many other aspects that I think, to give this it's due. I think we need that because I like the idea of trying to do the workshops that are coming up. I think these are going to require a lot of us doing a lot of homework and coming up with a good plan. And I think there's a lot of stuff that hasn't even had a chance to be looked at yet. And on my mind, I'm thinking US 27 and railroad, all kind of stuff that's suddenly getting thrown into the mix a little bit. So I'm okay with that. I think you guys are doing a good job so far. I would like to know when you're still thinking of the draft. When would the draft be?
There's a lot of dependencies, but currently we're planning to deliver the draft in early April. Now, of course, that's dependent on the workshop that we have.
Okay.
And guidance that were provided by you. And I'll also share, in our contract, it identified 5 public workshops. One of them has been completed, but you may decide that you want more outreach. And right, the contract was designed to be flexible so that we can meet the needs as they evolve. So we do appreciate at least where I think the discussion is going in terms of the flexibility, because one thing that frustrates us on the consulting side, and I'm sure it frustrates you as elected officials, is we're not presupposing what the end state is, and we're not just sitting in a room doing the work. We really want this to be a collaborative process, both with the members of the ILA and with the community, so they understand why ultimately the recommendations are being made.
And I'm thinking, and I understand the need for the public outreach and all those workshops. On this end, I'm more worried about these workshops we're doing so that we get a handle on it. Because I'd rather us have a handle on it first before we go out to the public.
Understood.
I think that's, I don't want to go out there half-baked. I want us to have a pretty good idea where this thing's moving and then be able to have real good answers. To go out there half-baked is like the last thing I want to do. So
Understood.
I'm okay with it.
I know we have a number of member comments. It occurs to me, subject to the consensus of the group, it occurs to me that as we're having this discussion, it might be helpful to have the update from the master plan, which is the next agenda item before we decide on the extension. So we have all of that information. If everyone's in agreement, while they set up, I'll turn to member comments. So that may educate and energize some of that discussion. So if you want to set up wherever you were normally going to set up and make sure they have a microphone for that. In the meantime, I'll turn it to members, starting with Member Dunn.
Good morning. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have 3 questions for consideration here. Number 1, I'm curious what the impact on the budget would be for this extension. Secondly, and I think Mayor asked that question already, but I want to be crystal clear. When would we get the first draft of the master plan? And then when would the final draft be ready to be vetted by the public? And then my final question is, with the extension, when will the public education begin? Those are my 3 questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'll turn it to Member Bright Cruz, and then we're on down the line. And we'll address each of those questions, Member Dunn, in this SES update. Okay.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I agree with Member Furr. I think that, what we've done so far is we've laid a lot of the groundwork, the foundation for what it is. But at the end of the day, this is a 40-year plan. This is for the next generation. And at this point, to rush it and to come up with a solution that's not optimal, I think would be doing a disservice to the whole process from beginning to end. So I think this time will be well spent. And it's really the most critical part, I believe, of the whole process, and it's what I've been hoping we would get to, and I'm excited that this is all coming together. So awesome.
Okay.
I certainly support it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with my fellow colleagues here of their concerns. As you are setting up to address our questions, my first is if you can also go into details of what you will need from us to meet that 6-month deadline, and as well as for public feedback. I don't necessarily think we only need to rely on workshops, but also a public comment period where folks can submit that virtually, and that will cut down on people coming to us versus us meeting them where they're at. So I really want us to amplify on ways for us to really meet the community where they are. So that is my emphasis. And then lastly, I want to make sure that if we go into this August deadline, that you are not going to come back and ask for an additional deadline. So to Commissioner Dunn's point, how is this going to impact our budget? And is it going to be a burden on, I believe folks have submitted their financials already. Are you going to, based on this extension, will you have to go back to those cities and say there has been an increase And so I want to avoid that. And then lastly, as we're doing the public comments or workshops, I would also encourage us doing a city tour, going to our city commissions and doing maybe a 15-minute presentation to our other colleagues, because yes, we report out, but it's best if we have someone who is actually working on the master plan come and give them an update as well. That's all from me, Mr. Chair.
We'll keep those in line. We'll have a discussion. I know from your perspective, I think we've had this discussion, going to 31 cities wasn't really part of that budget, but we'll have to figure out how we get that done. So it's an excellent point. Member Shuham, we'll split it since the county's paying for all this. Member Shuham.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly understand the sentiments of my colleagues, but I, first of all, am from a contract world where someone would have presented us with an analysis of the impact of the delays that you've incurred. Does such a document exist? Where is the 6 months coming from?
So we've been presenting the project management plan updates. Some of that is included in there, and some of it is simply the duration between submitting the drafts and receiving comments. And just for example, I know that it's in the project management plan with the first major deliverable, which was the Task 2 existing resources white paper. It was issued to the members of the executive committee on 3 separate occasions. And so you can imagine it was submitted. We waited for feedback to be received. It was incorporated. It was submitted again in the interest of making sure that we absolutely had everything right, in part because we know that we asked for a lot of data. But it was important to us to establish what the baseline conditions are. It wasn't until the final draft that was sent out that we received all the data that we.
Okay, so two concerns.
We did not receive all the data that we requested, but we had to cut it off. We had.
Okay, so I'm not questioning that there was a delay. What I'm missing is a document that says we were going to have this to you by the end of February, which, by the way, I have shared with constituents, with organizations. So excited to see it, and now I feel like I need to go back and say that's been delayed, right? What I'm missing is the impact of my 3-week delay. Is that a 3-week delay to you? That's what I'm missing. Normally you would see some sort of an analysis.
Yeah, so we anticipated that. When we put our proposal together that was incorporated into the agreement, there were timelines that we expected from the authority and that you could expect from us. So one of the things that we asked for was consolidated feedback on all draft deliverables within 5 business days. So if you would like, we can put together a timeline of what contributed to the delay. Some of them are on our side and some of them are simply a schedule that has lags that are built in.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If we don't receive consolidated feedback.
But as council said, the ones that are on your side are on your side, right? So, I have a concern about the 6-month duration. On the other hand, obviously we want the best product. And if you don't feel like you can give us the best product for 6 months, then that's where we are. But I just feel, looking back to when this contract was negotiated, you especially, and certainly our former chair, were conveying to this organization the time is of the essence. And I don't understand what happened to that. Did something change? Is there something in the background that has loosened up the need for this to be finished by an earlier date?
From my perspective, nothing's changed. But on the other hand, I recognize there was a lot of data that didn't get turned in on time. And we had plenty of meetings.
When we first negotiated the contract, what was there was an 18-month crunch that had to happen. And I would just like to understand why that isn't the case any longer.
It was 180 days.
I'm sorry, 180 days.
We would have preferred 18 months.
I'm sorry, 180 days.
Which is why we wrote in the assumptions and limitations that were ultimately memorialized in the agreement. The challenge was that establishing the baseline, that was the benchmark. So in setting up the schedule, there were dependencies. So there were a number of activities that it would have been incredibly inefficient to start on in earnest until we had the baseline established. There were a number of things. We moved into a new fiscal year we expected to have that task 2 completed before the end of September. Once we moved into a new fiscal year, the financials changed. There was also population data that we were using census data to develop the model and the report for task 2. And it was Broward County specific data, not census data, but from the state specifically for Broward County. That information became available. We had conversations with the executive director and decided that it was important that we use the most current information. And it didn't just change the model, it changed the white paper, which then had a cascading effect into the task 4 white paper, where we're looking at the different scenarios for managing the waste that are.
So for the sake of simplicity, it sounds like what we're saying is based on delays in the collection and dissemination of information back to our consultant, we as the contracting party are willing to extend the contract by 6 months to give you the time that you need. You have the data that you need now.
Correct.
Okay. That's my first concern. And I will say to the executive director that I think if that is the case, that it was delays on the part of cities and members, that we need to be pushed harder. This is such a critical piece of work that I don't think it's okay to say, I had to ask 3 times and it delayed this so many times without us being really seriously educated on the impact of the delays on us or our staff. Because certainly, although I know the city of Hollywood did its best to get it to you, I don't think it was ever conveyed that those delays would then result in a 6-month delay. So I have a concern about that. And then I just.
If I may make to that point, I think first there have been a number of meetings where I've even said, embarrass us, tell us who isn't answering. Over and over, and that's been done. And then it was. I will acknowledge that while we didn't know that would end up in a 5-month, 3-day delay, there was a clear indication that and it's not just the executive committee, right? It was all of the members, the 28 who needed to produce information, and then reestablishing it. To that point, though, going forward, right, every piece of data or review that you need to make the next step has got to come with a hammer.
A hammer, and if I don't get it by this date, then the end work product will be delayed accordingly. And I don't think any of us really understood the extent of that impact.
I personally did. I understood that if we didn't get this data in, it was going to create problems further down. I also recognized that perhaps we were overambitious in expecting a 5-day review. These turned out to be very complex documents that were technical.
And again, I mean, we're here. We'll move forward in a collaborative fashion, but I think that's something that at the very beginning would have been, maybe in light of the complexity of this, that we should have known better. But we're here, and that's fine. But the bigger concern I have is something that Mayor Bright Cruz has raised at pretty much every meeting, which is the meat of this still hasn't been presented to us. And today, we are getting a presentation on one of the technologies, but it sounds like we're now just starting to talk about these workshops and things like this, and I'm concerned that as we get into this, we as a body are going to need, as you just said, maybe more workshops and more information. And how are we going to kind of control the impact of that data education on the end date for the final product?
If I may. So it's being done in parallel. It probably would have been wise to start the education component within the executive committee, perhaps the governing board as well, on the different technologies that we're talking about today. At the request of the executive director, we're going to talk about thermal conversion technologies. To be honest, I am not thrilled we're starting with thermal conversion. I would have much rather started with biological conversion or mechanical conversion, but we're approaching this in bite-sized pieces so that when the white paper is delivered to you, you're going to understand the technologies. the purpose of the presentation today is very high level, right? So that you understand terminology and technologies and why some may be considered and others will not. And we would like to do that for the others. But this is not, to answer the question about budget, because it's been raised a few times, we are not asking for any additional money at this time. If you remember, when we negotiated the agreement, there was a contingency budget. So as we finish tasks, money that is unspent flows into the contingency. So it was originally set at $100,000. We have used that in the past, and we will continue to use it for those activities that were not specifically contemplated at the time of contracting, but are beneficial to the delivery of this work.
Okay. Well, I would just ask, going forward, to the extent that there's deadlines and then there's critical deadlines, I guess is where I'm coming from. And to the extent that there are deadlines that are critically impacting your schedule, I would ask our director to please be more clear, more forward with us, or more, like the chair said, embarrass us more and make sure these things aren't happening. Because, I mean, personally, I'm just disappointed. I've relied pretty heavily on this February date. But certainly all of us want the best possible product, and we want to go into it being fully educated on the various options. So I will support the extension, but I just wanted to convey, I guess, personal disappointment that we're here. Sorry.
No, we appreciate the clarity. Thank you.
Member Ryan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this question is for SCS. I know you're asking for the August extension, but not to be overly ambitious, as you like to say, could it still possibly be done before? Could it be, it's an on or before date, or it's definitely, you can definitely need the 6 months?
We're pushing on all aspects of the work.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of factors that go into play.
Yeah.
But it could technically maybe be 4 months.
It could be.
Okay.
I will not commit to that.
Okay, I understand.
But
You don't want to ask for another extension, so that's why you're setting it out
Our
for 6
preference
months.
is to not, but I will also be clear that we need your help, right?
Exactly.
And okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ryan. So before you do your update, I want to, put two things in context. One, I think the vernacular we chose about a draft master plan coming in February perhaps was not the most accurate, right? Because when we talked about this at the last meeting, it was raised by Member Bright Cruz, and you said the meat. What we're going to likely get are a series of policy choices, a menu to choose from. Not them saying this is what we think you can do the best, the evaluation. Recognizing that. It's one reason why the request went out for everybody's calendar for a workshop date to schedule it. So we're prepared to do that before we walked in here today. Because what I want to contemplate is that we probably need monthly workshops for us. I'm not talking about the public ones, for us. Because these are very, when we start getting more granular, simply using our 2 hours here, which is covering a lot of data, we have to pick an auditor. We have to get, this is kind of mundane mechanical stuff, but we have to do it. It's not getting us to the analysis, to the meat, to being able to do that. And so I put that in the context as we see this extension being asked. It is incumbent on us, as I've said it from the beginning, many have as well. Time is of the essence, and we need to work hard. This committee, since the ILA has been signed, has been meeting sometimes more rapidly than every month, but no less than every month, even in the lead up to the holidays, which I'm sure some folks were like, why are we meeting on December 20th? But we knew we had work to do. So I want to, as this is being discussed in this update, to begin contemplating what does this look like for a monthly 4-hour workshop and begin preparing ourselves. Because if we are going to either meet an earlier time frame or the existing time frame, we have a lot of guidance to give. And so give that some thought. So what I'd like to do, if with the consensus, is to suspend the director's report and move to the SCS master plan update, and we'll come back to that. Is there a consensus on that? Okay. Daniel, I'll turn it to you. First, I want to begin with this. Let's put this in some context. What to expect from a draft master plan. I think there's this perception out there that what we'll get is your expertise in telling us what we should do.
So It's an iterative process. So the master plan is really the compendium of the discrete white papers.
Wait, let's break it up. Master plan versus the draft master plan, what you're bringing. I want to be really clear. Master plan is going to be the end product, right, of how we put the commodity puzzle together.
Correct.
Okay. What are we expecting in this first draft master plan when it comes out?
Let me answer that by moving behind that first. The next white paper that you'll see, and that will be the basis of the planned workshop, is the needs assessment. It will present scenarios to you of what a future solid waste system will look like. It will answer the what. Right? So as I was listening to your feedback, I'm thinking in terms of who, why, where, what, and when. Right? So we've answered the who, we've answered the why. Now we're getting to the what. What are the options that we're going to be looking at, scenarios, right? Landfill, let me be clear, because we've been asked this question many times. Even with the zero waste lens that we're using, you need a landfill. There is going to be residual that does not have value in the marketplace, and it needs to be placed somewhere. We're going to look at all of the activities that can be managed or implemented upstream from that to minimize the amount of waste that's being landfilled. As you stated, we're looking out over a long planning horizon, and we want the flexibility to make sure, or set the intention, we're always looking out over the horizon, because technologies do change. There are technologies that exist today that aren't ready for commercial application, but they may be at some point in the future. So the master plan ultimately is going to have the recommendations that answers those questions, right? Who, what, where, when, and how. Because it isn't just identifying what the system is. You need to know, how do we get to that end state, right? Right now, each municipality has its own collection contract. We need to align that. We talked early on in the project about guiding principles and creating uniformity across all of the ILA members. We are looking. So ultimately, we're hopefully, through this first workshop, we're going to narrow down what options are acceptable and which ones should be taken off the table, so that we're narrowing our focus. There's a series of tensions. We'll say that there is no perfect solution. What we're solving for is the optimal solution. And there are lots of ways to get there. We are going to present the facts to you based on our professional experience, but we rely on your judgment as elected officials and representatives of your community, and collectively forming the executive committee for the Solid Waste Authority, to give us guidance in what is acceptable to you moving forward. So the master plan will sort of tell the story, if you will, of where you are, where you want to go, and how we recommend you get there.
All right, so with respect to deliverables that are coming up, 1, 2, 5, and 8 have been distributed. They have varying importance in the decision-making process. Some are informational, and others are more focused on concepts that we have to choose from. The next big one is Task 9.
Task 9 has been submitted. It should be on the website.
Okay, fantastic. Yesterday went up. All right, fantastic. So that needs to, Task 9, which is the innovative future technologies, which we've seen. And I want to thank you for categorizing those, right, in that which is experimental, and we hear about and people say we should do, and which has not sustained itself or has not been successful. Thereafter, what is next before we would schedule a workshop?
Delivery of the Task 4 draft white paper.
Okay, when is that expected?
We are expecting to have that delivered in time, so that you have a chance to review that going into the workshop.
That is critical for us to review before the workshop. Would you agree?
Absolutely agree.
Okay. So Task 4.
We're going to get it February 7th, it says.
So do we have a date certain?
Which one is that?
7th.
No, but our intention is to provide that read-ahead package at least a week before the workshop. So I know that.
Here's what I would suggest, if possible. And I know you're moving forward. We haven't chosen the date, right? But we know it's going to be the week of the 10th. There's been pretty good consensus on dates so far, but a week may not be sufficient time for two reasons that I think are important. One, digesting from the executive committee to make sure that we've been able to formulate, get with our own staffs, and prepare for it. Second, it is an opportunity upon its issuance because the public workshop, the workshop is not a public workshop. It is an executive committee workshop. We're not going to spend 2 hours having a debate outside of the committee. We need to focus where we are. But we need public input on that. So we need enough time for the public to digest it and submit comments, even if we're not going through an extended public comment period during the workshop, so we can get to the work. Because 4 hours is not enough, quite frankly. We're breaking it up because it's virtually impossible to get 8 hours of all of us together, right? So we're going to have a series of these, and as we go forward, it certainly will be more robust. But I want to make sure that we're giving enough time for the interested stakeholders to review and submit to the executive director, and then get those to the executive committee. So that 1 week seems a little tight for me, and I don't want to push back the workshop date. So you see where I'm going, right?
Yes. Let me discuss with the team, but our target date, and I will confirm that with the executive director, who will presumably confirm it with you. Let's target for before the end of the month to have that draft to you.
Okay. Member Shuham, then Member Mateo-Bone.
You just raised something that I'm curious about. For me, for example, in the city of Hollywood, I would have my public works director. We have a chief resiliency officer, and I'm just curious, in Sunrise, who else would you, within your staff, would you suggest reviewing these white papers?
I think you need to start with the city managers because there's going to be input on contractual issues, issues that we need to consider in that regard that maybe I don't visualize well, but then the sustainability folks. And then ultimately those that are responsible for oversight of collection and hauling to make sure that we're considering these issues adequately. That's kind of my first blush thought.
Thank you.
If I may, it's focusing on technologies, not the collection piece.
I understand, but we also need to fit within a broader sense. We need to begin preparing because, as you pointed out, if we get to these technologies and there's 28 different, hopefully everybody joins, hauling contracts that are inconsistent about where they can go, what they can do, we're going to have, we'll have stumbled. So we need to begin thinking of that process. Member Mateo-Bone and then Member Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would love clarification. So when you submit these documents to me, are we also asking for input from our community as well? Are they providing us input, or is it coming directly to us? And then we are the ones who will review it and then give it back to the community for input. Just want some clarification there.
Right now, to try to work through this and understand what the executive committee and maybe the governing board, direction is, it goes directly to you for you to disseminate to your teams.
Okay. And then to your point, Board Member Shuhan, I would like to give my staff enough time to review it and provide good feedback and not rushed feedback. So I would like at least 2 weeks so I can get my folks ready to also brief me if they need to give me any updates. And also I want to flag, I'm not sure what y'all's timeline is, but February kicks off our budget series where our finance team and all of our teams come together and start building out budgets. So if we can get that to us sooner than later, just don't want to overwhelm and spread my staff too thin. Thank you.
I understand, and I say this in a loving way. The schedule is predicated on authority review and provision of consolidated feedback to us within 5 business days following the issuance of a draft document. So when we receive questions about why schedule may slip, we have commitments, and there are commitments that the authority made in contracting with us.
Well, let's be clear about what the workshop is, right? This is a date for us to sit and talk about this. It's not necessarily part of that process by which we're telling you to revise the document, right? You're going to submit to us this task 4, future needs assessment, and then we're going to take that. This is the biggest, really, the biggest junction that we're facing, right? Yep. So whether 5 days is it or not, that's not really what's happening with this workshop. It's an opportunity for us because we cannot talk amongst ourselves.
Understood.
Right? So staff will have time. We'll be able to synthesize the paper. So I think that the more important issue is to the extent that you can get, 10 business days, great. That's really got to be the goal. And we'll work on our staff to let them know in advance this is coming, right? We'll prepare and say you're ready. But for us as the executive committee, we have to be prepared when we walk into this workshop to finally start talking about these tough issues. And I want to make sure we're outside of a normal, regular meeting. I know you understand.
I understand and I agree. I'm simply stating because there's concern about the budget slip, or excuse me, the schedule slipping, that there are dependencies. So we have, hard coded into the schedule that every day after 5 business days that consolidated comments aren't received, it pushes out the schedule.
Understood. So we look forward to seeing it at the end of the month.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So Member Dunn, just 1 second. I want to make sure that there were a list of questions that the members had before we came to this, dealing with the extension. I want to make sure we are prepared to answer all those. I'll go to Member Dunn, and then we'll go through those questions to make sure we hit them all, including Member Dunn had 3 separate ones.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Executive Director, we have a new interim city attorney and city manager in my city. So it would be greatly appreciated if you could, in an email, just please send the backup for task 1, task 5, task 8, and task 9.
Okay.
So that I can forward it to staff and start having those conversations in advance of task 4 being released. Thank you.
All right, there were a series of questions that were asked. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Member Brightcrus, I missed.
Thank you. I just want just clarification. So we're going through these different technologies, the thermal, and we'll go through them all. And basically our goal, I want to be clear on our goal. Our goal is to give you feedback on which ones we prefer and which ones we should eliminate. Is that correct? Okay, perfect. Where I want to get to, and I'm hoping it's the next step, but I haven't really heard it yet, is once we get through that, is the plan to go through each of the waste streams and then apply these technologies to those waste streams so that at that point we are really putting together the plan that we want to do? Is that the next step?
That is what task 4 is about. So task 2, assessing the current conditions, we applied, so a few meetings ago, there was a discussion about the waste composition study. That was applied to population in each of your respective communities, each ILA community. That formed sort of a projection of not just the total waste stream, but the components of.
Great.
That was then used to develop a model that looked at different scenarios using different approaches and technologies. Some of it is focusing on what can individuals do at their homes in terms of organics management, what can be done at public events. So we looked at the waste streams and tried to find different alternatives, or what we're calling scenarios, to maximize the beneficial use of the resources.
Awesome.
We are also looking at complex approaches like mixed waste processing, which has been successfully implemented around the country and around the world. And part of the workshop is to talk about, well, what are the tensions, right? It works, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot to talk about. We're going to be clear and really focused in identifying what we believe the decision points are, but by providing the information far enough in advance, we're asking you to bring your considerations, because we're going to end up with a better product for all of us if we have that valuable input for consideration.
That's great feedback, and I'm super excited that we're going to get there. That's awesome.
And I should say, we're also very excited.
Good.
This is what we love to do, and we appreciate the opportunity.
And to be clear, I know the members know this from their own work within their own municipalities and within the county. A workshop is not a place at which there will be final decisions made. We don't vote on anything. Instead, this is an opportunity to start discussing and funneling down on the issues. As a result, we may give you some sense of guidance, right? I just want to make sure the public understands. And I also want to be clear. Again, we should have this discussion about whether or not over March and April, particularly, there should be additional workshop dates reserved, because as we funnel this down, we're going to walk out with information we didn't fully appreciate or understand, or it had been clarified for us. In addition, as more of the public starts sending comments to the executive director about these various discussions, we'll be incorporating. So I think we need to be contemplating that this is not a one and done workshop that we're going to come out and go, okay, we've got it. Instead, I think what we're going to do is going to help us to reimagine, reorient, and probably re-educate ourselves. Commissioner.
Thanks.
Member Fur.
Thank you. A couple of questions that I don't need answers for now, but I do want you to consider when you're bringing all this back to us. You just mentioned the idea of flow control with all the contracts. And I think what's important for us is to see and know when you could have all those contracts, when they're all up, and when you can have an actual flow control that would be dedicated, and what that timeline looks like.
Yeah.
I don't need the answer. I mean,
It's been contemplated.
Okay.
We hear you and we'll address it.
and how it fits into the global agreement that Broward County has right now with all of the, with, I think it's 16 cities. That's a 5-year agreement and the options there, and how that fits in. With regard to knowing how, when you're making suggestions, much to what I think Mr. Lasky had talked about with waste management, knowing that they're probably going on board in 2 years with their recycling, is the recommendation that we're working with them? Are we building our own? Are we giving both options?
Yeah, so
like I said,
we will address it
Yep.
at the workshop.
And then when you're talking about for like the organic stuff, the logistics for that. And because we're already looking at how to do it with like school board, how to, take cafeteria food. But does that require a dedicated fleet of trucks? All those kind of things what it would require to be able to take that to wherever.
Yes.
And so I'm looking for those things in this, because that's where it really, rubber hits the road on that. Whether it's, and I don't know whether you've had a chance to talk, I've been talking with the school board, but it's going to require talking with the airport, with the seaport, with the hospitals, with all those different ones, and asking, how would you do source separation? And those are, I don't know if that's outside of the perimeter of where you're thinking of, and it might be. And if it is, then we need to figure out how to do that. Okay.
That's a discussion we have to have. To that point, the Broward Workshop is very interested in this process. They are beginning to coalesce those various groups, right? Hospitality, hoteliers, one group, beginning to engage because they know they have to be part of this process, and they're a big portion of it. So I want to thank Mr. Cole for continuing to update them, but also giving us the opportunity to present. I think in the coming months, we'll see a much more dedicated effort by the workshop as well to help us understand what that looks like for their members as well. All right, so before we go further, Mr. Cole, what is it by contract? And what's that? Oh, yeah, sorry. Member right now.
Just briefly logistically, based on the number of workshops we're going to be having, based on, I know, Todd, you sent the email out asking availability and rating them 1 to 6. Just a suggestion for all of us to consider. What about a firm, like we come here the third Friday now for the next year. What about a firm monthly workshop? Laying out a schedule to say over the next 6 months, we're dedicating this time, whether it's 4 hours. Listen, I don't have a problem on weekends. This work is important, just as opposed to we're shooting for one workshop right now, as opposed to appropriately scheduling it out. So we all know, we all have the expectation, so we could account for that accordingly.
I agree 100%, member right now. That's why the workshop date was first to find out that we can get February schedule. And then, as I said earlier, make sure we're scheduling out, and whatever that looks like, whether it's regular or we're having to search calendars. I know it's difficult in this meeting for folks to do it, but if that's the will of the body, I think what we should do is allow the executive director to do what he did here and send out email working with SCS to say, this is when we're going to have a workshop. You can appear remotely, or if you need to, or what you need for your staff, but to be able to have that scheduled so that when we come back together, we know going forward, March, April, May, as we start. Yeah, I think so. All right. Is that the consensus, to have the executive director do that? All right. So we'll do that. Thank you, member Rydell. All right, Mr. Cole.
Yes, I just wanted to put the extension issue in a little bit of perspective. When the ILA was drafted, there was very specific time deadlines in the ILA. So even though the Solid Waste Authority goes on for many decades, it automatically terminates if you don't have the governing board approve the master plan and something called the facilities amendment, which is an amendment to the ILA, which will implement certain things in the master plan. So the effective date of the ILA was approximately October 1. It was when the 75% threshold was reached. I think it was around October 1. It might have been in September
year
of 2023. So this, under the ILA, unless you extend it, and I'll tell you how you can extend it. This solid waste authority terminates on around April 1st of 25. Okay, so you have the authority, the executive committee has the authority to extend that by 6 months. So you can extend it to October 1 of 25, approximately. Like I'm saying, I have to check the exact date. The governing board can extend it for another 12 months. Not you, but the governing board. That gets you to approximately October 1, 26. That is your drop dead date. If you don't have the master plan and the facilities amendment done, approved by the governing board by October 1, 26, give or take, this group is going to terminate. Now, it's not impossible to amend the ILA to extend it further, but that's going to require going back to all of the cities. So in your mind, you should keep,
We'll just get it done by April 1st, 25. That's a simple answer, isn't it?
Right. Well, April 125 is the easiest, but October 125 approximately is, because you can extend it by 6 months. And then once you have that, then you're going to have to go back to all the cities and get them to approve it, et cetera. But just want you to keep those deadlines in the back of your mind. So like, even if you're talking about extending to August, that's presupposing you're going to extend for the 6 months, which you have the authority to do. And then you might end up having to go back to the governing board to go even further up to a year. So I just want you to know, keep that in the back of your mind. There is some time pressure on it.
So hence, monthly workshops, right? And if we need to, I don't know that the executive committee, obviously it's the will of the body, but the executive committee meetings need to be more rapid than monthly, because a lot of this is administrative business. The work is going to be done in these workshops to kind of funnel us down. But to the extent we need special meetings and we have to schedule in between, I know this body will do it. You guys have all been expediting the schedule. Any comments you want to make on that?
Yeah, so let me put it in the context of the budget question that a few have raised. We are still well within our budget, but that is for the contracted services. We love workshops that are productive, and we encourage them, but that was not a contracted scope. But that's why we advocated for the contingency budget at the beginning. We will keep the executive director advised on the status of that. As we complete tasks, again, on our ledger, we're moving those unspent dollars into the contingency. So
here's what I would suggest, as we have now for the first time talked about monthly workshops. If there's going to be a budgetary impact on contingency or otherwise, please provide that to the executive director to provide to us, so that the members understand. I think these are important, but that's a value judgment for the body.
Understood.
Okay. All right. Anything further you want to on the update?
Yeah, there was a question about public education. I just want to point out that we now have a robust website that is a repository for information. So the white papers, as they're completed, are posted there. My understanding, I'll let you, Mr. Executive Director, speak to the transition from the League of Cities to the stand that now stood up Solid Waste Authority website.
Okay, Member Furr and then Member Dunn.
Just to say, I like Nancy's idea of being able to have public comment on those. I think that's a good idea.
So-
And just where, instead of waiting for public outreach, I think that's a very good idea. To
harvest it ahead of time.
Yep.
Member Dunn.
Thank you. Wanted to kind of amplify that recommendation as well. And just to be clear, we did have an education outreach plan that was developed, right? So the implementation of that plan, not just the website, but
Yeah, so let me speak to that. Within our scope of work, it was a white paper that identified best practices for education and outreach. There is a separate contract and consulting team that is focused on the implementation of that, but that is outside of the master plan. So-
that's outside of your scope.
Correct.
But we do have somebody else contracted to do that work. So, Mr. Executive Director, I guess if we can get clarity on because, in the public comment, somebody brought up making sure that we are doing education and outreach from now. So I just want to make sure that everything is happening simultaneously. Thank you.
Okay. And if I may, I will add that we have received feedback that has been provided through the website, and that is distributed to the team. So we are aware of that feedback that comes in, as well as the survey information. So we did contribute to the technical content in the first survey, and we'll continue to support those. because that helps us understand what the voice of the customer is.
Okay. We still have a heavy agenda ahead of us. Anything further that you want to provide on the update and or the extension? No. Okay. Yeah, we need a motion and we need a second on, sorry. Motion by Member Mateo-Bone to August 3rd, 2025, seconded by Member Rydell. Any discussion on that?
Just for the motion, I should be clear that there's no budgetary impact of it. That we're not approving any additional funds. We're just approving an extension of time.
Member
Yeah.
Vice.
Yeah, just a quick question. So following up on Attorney's recommendation there, do we want to do the full 6 months or do we want to do it till August 3rd? Or do we, because this would be the opportunity to choose between the two, correct?
August 3rd is a 5-month and 3-day extension. Just
That's
to
what I'm
let you know.
saying. So
Right.
do you want to do the full 6 months or just stick with the 5?
I think we heard August 3rd. Let's try to do it. We'll come
Okay.
back and we can
Just-
always do it again, I think.
just throw it out there
That's
as an
just my
option.
view, just my view. Okay, any further discussion? Yes. Member Shuham, your microphone.
Just want to kind of enhance your point. It's not that we're not voting on a monetary adjustment. There is no monetary adjustment. So by giving this 5-month and 3-day extension, all associated costs that could be asserted are waived, as I'm understanding correctly. There are no costs from the consultant associated with this change. It's not that it's being held back.
No, in terms of the contracted budget
Right.
amount, we are not asking for any more money at this point.
That's all. Thank you.
Member Rydell.
I agree, Member Bright.
Microphone.
I agree with my neighbor member that we should just give him the 6 months. I understand the need for expediency. I think 6 months would be appropriate. I think Member Ryan, AJ Ryan, said it correctly with, being wishful and maybe something sooner. But I think in the abundance of caution with what our attorney just advised as well, I think a 6-month extension would be appropriate now, today, as opposed to 5 months and 3 days. That's all.
My only concern is that we, even with an extension of our authority, that gets us to October 1. Not a lot. If we do 6 months, we're into September. So August 3rd right now is what was requested. I try not to give folks more than they want. If anything, we can shorten it. But it is a debate amongst the body. So if there's a push to go to 6, we can certainly have that. The motion on the floor right now is to August 3rd. Any further debate on it? Call the question. Who's calling? Yeah. Yep.
Chair Ryan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fur,
Yes.
Member Shuham. Member Horland. Member Mateo-Bone.
Yeah.
Member Dunn.
Yes.
Member Dunn, sorry. Member Rydell.
Yes.
Member Mead's not here. Okay, Member AJ Ryan.
Yes.
Scott's not here.
Yes.
Member Bright Cruz.
Yes.
Right, passes unanimously. All right, thank you very much. Let's move now to the workshop dates while we're still talking about the update plan. As I understand it, there was a survey that I asked the executive director to go out. Did we have,
Yes.
how many responses?
As of yesterday, we had 9. Of those 9 responses, Monday, the 10th, was unanimous.
February 10 and 10.
February 10th from 8 to 12.
All right, any discussion on that? Any opposition to that date?
Hold on one second.
Everyone voted for that date.
12.
Okay, all right, that's the date. That's when we'll
Okay.
do it. And then the executive director will send out, again, work with SCS on future workshop dates. Yes, here.
This room.
Yes,
Here.
sir. Okay, and we'll send out, it'd be very, very helpful for everyone. As that survey goes out, please answer it. We do look at the data, and then at least the next meeting, we can lock those down. And it's important because we have to reserve the room. All right, thank you. We'll go back to the executive director's report. Sustainability officer, office personnel. First of all, there's a requirement for a sustainability officer. I think that contemplated we'd be further down the road. At some point, there's no timeline or requirement for it. So just wanted to bring it before the body. If there's a request that we go out and hire one, we could certainly do that. Otherwise, in the interim, we can simply allow the executive director to keep doing what he's doing, and mindful that at some point we will be hiring a sustainability officer. Any further discussion on that? Okay. Office personnel, the executive director is reaching out so that we can hire an administrative assistant, so we can transition from the league to an administrative assistant. Please outline what that process will be and what your plan is on top of that.
Right now, the process is we're actually looking for an outside firm to be able to do the hiring and take care of the HR portion so that we don't have to take that risk on as the authority right now. That person would be a permanent type position through that agency until we're up and established and we have a better understanding down the road here about bringing more staff onto the authority. We look to do that over the next 30 days.
Okay, any discussion on that item? All right, just keep everyone updated as that goes forward. All right, SWA annual audit. To the comment earlier, yeah, I've seen the authority referred to in various acronyms. At least for the communications to the school board, I have remained consistent with Solid Waste Authority of Broward County. So we're going to try to stick with that unless we can certainly have a deeper discussion on it, but just to address that issue. So on the SWA annual audit, Mr. Cole.
Thank you. Under the interlocal agreement and under Florida law, we're required to have an audit every year. So under the ILA, we have a standing audit committee. The members of the standing audit committee include member Mead and member AJ Ryan. Those are the only 2 of the 5 that remain. We also had members Davis, Lalabos, and Ross were the other 3 members. So we need to replace the 3 that are no longer on the executive committee. In addition to that group, the standing audit committee will serve as the audit selection committee. Under Florida statutes, there's a procedure we have to do to hire auditors. It's one of the only types of things that the state statute tells you have to do a certain way. I'm not sure why they do it, but that's what they've done. So that audit selection committee is going to have to meet relatively soon to approve the factors that will be considered and an RFP. Then that committee will review the proposals. They'll interview if they want. They will rank them. And then this executive committee is going to choose the auditor. We do need to do this relatively soon because we've already completed the year. So we have to do the audit of those numbers. So the first thing you should do today, or the only thing you need to do today, is replace the 3 members. And then the 5 will need to decide on when you're going to meet. I would propose a meeting in probably mid-February. We can come to that meeting with a proposed RFP that will include all of the factors. The committee under the statute, you have to approve the factors. So that will be included in that, and then we can get that RFP out by the end of February, and then we'll proceed from there. So the main thing you have to do today is choose who the other 3 people are going to be on the standing audit committee, which will be the audit selection committee, and then decide when you're going to meet.
Okay, to the members, anyone wish to volunteer for this incredibly important job?
Can I ask a predicate?
Okay, I take that as someone's volunteer. So we have 1. I saw your hand go up.
I'm gonna ask Mr. Cole just a quick question. Can the audit committee meet prior to our February meeting at 8 a.m.?
Yeah, you can combine it.
7, 8 o'clock.
You could, or you could do it right after. Either way, you certainly could do it that same day.
I volunteer.
That's up to you.
All right, so we have 2 for the slate. Is there a 3rd? He's on it.
AJ's on it.
I would, but I'm not allowed, so just so you know.
Yeah, there is a danger when you don't show up that you get volunteered. Well, we could certainly proceed with 4, right? For right now, is there any requirement?
Well, we're required to have a 5-member audit selection. I think you should just go ahead and choose someone.
Jordan. Do we have a motion for Jordan? So, all right, motion by his very good friend and colleague, member Shuham. Is there a second on that one? Second. All right, so we have the slate, member Rydell, member Horland, and the volunteering of member Isro. Any discussion on that slate? All in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Good. I'll let the executive director break the good news too.
And be
All right, so
expecting
let's-
an
let's,
email shortly on the email for the meeting on February.
So let's.
So at the February meeting, it'll be before.
I will email the members and we will determine the best time for that.
So just to be,
You got it.
just to be clear, remember right now, just to be clear, there's 2 meetings that are going to be in February, right? There's a workshop and the regular. You can choose, the committee can choose right now if you want. That's probably the easiest, right? 8, right. So that's what I'm just saying. You can meet after.
The problem with doing it right before is you don't know how long it's going to last. And
right.
We're not going to want to hold up the whole workshop. So we might be better off doing it right after. I don't think this first meeting of the Art Selection Committee is going to be very long. It should be relatively quick.
Can it be done virtually?
For the first one, can we do it before?
Okay.
Right, so.
Yeah. Before the regular.
All right, so what you're talking about,
I think we get it done now, as Mr. Cole said.
The first one.
so you're talking about the Friday the 21st
Yep.
as opposed to the 10th. Yeah.
Okay. I'll get out an email to confirm.
But I would do it. Kids are in school.
All right, we've covered that. Any further discussion or anything we need on that, Mr. Cole? No. Sorry, Member Fur.
Just real quick, the room is clear for February 10th
Perfect.
till 1:30.
Okay, perfect. All right, so that's done. Survey update.
That's an online. We actually have, it's trying to conceptual here right now.
So
Hi.
one of just so the members know, one of the things that I've asked the executive director moving forward is for all of our presentations, to have those PowerPoints available and distributed before we get here. I've seen that it's very helpful. You all come with your questions that we're already prepared. It expedites given we only have 2 hours. So we're going to try to achieve that moving forward. Go ahead, Mr. Executive Director.
This should go very quick. All right. On the conceptuals on the line, they have a short presentation. I think it's 4 slides with regards to the initial review of the first survey. And there'll be a more detailed, as stated in the email that was sent out, there'll be a more detailed review of the first survey here available next month. Laura, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Ryan. Good morning. I'm just going to give a brief overview of the preliminary results from survey number 1. So in total, thank you so much to all of your cities for stepping up and getting this out. We really appreciate it. The target goal was 1,000 responses, and we got 2,084 responses, 2,063 of which were in English, 18 in Spanish, 3 in Creole. You asked for a chart, a list of the cities based on percentage of respondents. Is that slide up? I can't see it, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we will distribute this list to you because it's much easier than the pie chart, but at least the pie chart shows that nice diversity. I just want to hit on age and income, again, just showing diversity of respondents here. So 65 plus on the age was the highest response rate. We got almost 40% in that age bracket, but you can see, pretty much every other age bracket, only 4% chose not to answer. On the income side, a third preferred not to answer, which is pretty standard. 16% in the 100 to 149,999 income level was the highest level there. But please note that about 20% were in the lower income levels. So a nice, diverse response rate as well. We wanted to just point out this is a willingness to recycle. I think this should give everyone, some pep in their step as we talk about the public education process. 60% of the respondents indicated that nothing is preventing them from recycling now. And then another 22% shared that they want to learn more about how to recycle right. So obviously we're doing a further drill down on those responses to understand them and inform the education plan. Again, that was the purpose of this survey, was to establish that baseline and see where those opportunities existed for outreach. Featuring Mayor Fur here on Channel 6. My team did a full push on this survey, very wide public outreach plan here. Everything was provided in 3 languages. Obviously we had materials distributed to all 28 member cities, Broward County, 35 community partners. 12 senior housing and HOA groups, 54 media outlets. We got about $1.3 million in earned media on this. And again, that was thanks to NBC6 who covered the story. And then some local publications that did as well to get it out into the communities. And then we did those 6 paid ads, if you remember, on those 6 lower income targets. The zip codes were provided. We spent about $1,200. We only paid 3 cents per click. That ads got 39,735 views. Thank you, Member Dunn, for the videos and Mayor Furr. And those ads drove 331 clicks to the survey. And then I just, again, showing a sample of our toolkit that we provided to the cities. We tried to make it as easy as possible. We had a very short time frame, so thank you everyone again for all of your help.
Okay.
Questions?
Thank you for the update.
Any questions or comments before we move to the next item? All right, we have next up, sorry, go ahead, sorry. That's old. I missed it behind your water bottle. I apologize.
No, I missed it.
Never done.
Well, so on question number 1 with the cities, could you also, not now, but I want to know the count, not just the percentage, because if only 5 people from my city responded, then I have work to do. So,
Understood.
yeah. Yeah, so.
And Coral Springs, member Mateo Bowen voted 28 times.
And then
well done, Coral Springs.
And then my other question is, I know that we asked zip codes, right? Did we not?
Yes,
we did.
Could you share what, I don't see that zip code data here.
So keep in mind a more detailed report's being provided. All that data was extrapolated into an Excel raw file. So
I get it.
Yeah, so we will definitely
So I guess,
provide that.
let me ask a question more specifically. If we could get some indication for those 6 distressed zip codes, the 6 zip codes with the highest unemployment in Broward County, I'd like to know what the participation rate is. Because if it's not high, then we might need to make sure that those communities fully understand and are really engaged in a different way than how we engage them now. Thank you.
Understood.
Excellent point. Okay, Member Breakers.
Yeah, quick question. As I reviewed that, I thought it was great to see it broken out by language, make sure that we were connecting with all the languages, but I didn't see where it was all combined together in one total with all the languages together. Can we get that?
We will have to that'll be part of the detailed analysis.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
Because I just think when we look at those percentages, we're not looking at the big picture.
Understood.
Looking at pieces. Okay, thanks.
When will that refined data be available?
RRS is looking at that data right now. They said they would have that available by the end of this month. So as soon as it's available, I'll get out an email of those results, and then we should be able to talk about that at the workshop at the earliest.
Okay, perfect. With respect to a commercial survey that's being developed and drafted, the Broward Workshop is committed to assist us in making sure the information gets out. And then we'll work with local chambers as well, since we're looking at the commercial side of this. And there's another residential phone focus group survey set for development of February 2025, correct?
Correct. And we'll talk about that as we review the detailed information from Survey 1.
Okay. Any further discussion on that item? I know we have Member Mateo Bowen's presentation. I just would, out of professional courtesy, could we possibly get the county update before we move to yours? Fair? Everybody ready for and a consensus to move up? Item 11, county update on Monarch Hill. And then we'll go to Member Mateo Bowen's presentation.
I think right now, I'm not sure if, Kevin, there's an update.
Well, there ought to be. There's going to be a meeting, so I'm just curious. There's a meeting coming up in 2 weeks, I think, right? Mr. Kelleher, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, all. Yes, the update is that there's on January 28th that the Board of County Commissioners will be considering through public hearing 4 items, and that is there's 2 that have to do with the land use plan amendment, one for the BMSD and one for just a general county plan. Then there's a code of ordinance changes that would prohibit garbage above 25 feet. And then there's another public hearing on increasing the maximum height of landfills to 325 feet. And that'll be on, the public hearing will be on Tuesday, January 28th.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. Member Rydell.
Thank you. Just a couple quick points, and I'm going to be actually coming from a place that I don't normally come from with this. This was continued from the previous hearing in November, and the reason for the continuance
Don't disappear, Mr. Keller. There may be some questions.
was my understanding it was contractual. Just to kind of tell the board, there were some contractual issues. I think Beam could speak to it a little more clear, but it's queued up for another hearing on January 28th. I'm going to ask this board for something, but I'm going to come from a little bit of a different place. When we heard from SCS, they actually took a different position, an interesting position regarding our waste stream resources and things that we're going to be able to kind of fix with the work here. What this extension does is, well, I don't support it personally. It actually does an interesting thing for the future of this county as well. It actually limits it to essentially the Monarch Hill to a C&D landfill. Is that fair, Mr. Keller?
There's a proposal that has been provided by Waste Management, what they would do if they got both expansions, and one of those was to stop taking municipal solid waste at the conclusion of one of their contracts.
27.
Yeah, in September 30th, 2027. So after September 30th, 2027, it would be primarily a C&D and bulky waste landfill.
It's an interesting component that kind of a trustee of this process is agreeing to limit a lot of waste streams to only one waste stream for foreseeably the next 20 to 30 years. I say that because we don't even know where our waste streams are going to go. So hypothetically, Broward County may agree to this in 2 weeks, where this body says, hey, we need Monarch Hill for other types of waste streams as well, and a reduced capacity down the road is another resource, which is a little contrary to what I normally say here. But the purpose of that comment to this board and to Mr. Keller, to the county, and I know Mr. Laystrom's here as well on behalf of Waste Management, is I'm going to ask this board for consensus that the chair can write a letter asking the county to delay this vote. There's two prongs to this vote. We heard it when we were upstairs at that meeting at the executive committee that Waste Management believes they're capped right now on a 6 to 7 year plan with what's as is. And if you give them both extensions, roughly 6 to 8, 9 years for each extension, one's width, one's height, just to keep it real plain language, right? The land use plan, which was kind of more logical than the height plan. But by the county moving forward with this, where we haven't even delved into the work here of waste streams, because listen, I think we can all agree, and I've said this to Beam, I've said this to county commissioners when I've met with them, we are going to need a landfill. That's not, but the conditions that this agreement that Waste Management has presented to Broward County that they're going to vote on actually limits the entire landfill. So how in good faith can this board not engage the county and say, this isn't an emergency situation right now. We're not in there. The county has the ability to work. So I'm asking today for consensus by this executive committee to have the chair write a letter asking the county commission to delay this vote until there could be a real study with the work we're doing here, because maybe an extension is appropriate. Maybe an expansion is appropriate, but maybe there's other caveats that tie directly into the work we're doing here. So Beam, while I appreciate it, I say maybe it's not all about C&D. Maybe there's other waste streams that are needed, which is kind of contrary to what I stand for, but I'm taking my regional approach hat and looking at the work we're doing here. So if we're saying we do need a landfill, they're going to limit it with what's going to go on the 28th.
So the record's clear. There's already limitations on that landfill by virtue of an agreement between Waste Management and the city of Coconut Creek that limited to 175,000 tons of municipal solid waste. And that was done to address concerns at that time from the city of Coconut Creek about the smells that come with municipal solid waste. So I'm not going to speak for Waste Management. It seems that their proposal is to further address that concern. If that's not the city of Coconut Creek's pleasure anymore, I'm sure they would take that off the table.
So I'm speaking here as a member of this authority. I'm not speaking here as an individual. I will be speaking as an individual in my elected capacity at the county commission meeting, but I'm speaking to this board today, stating we have an opportunity here to ask the county. And I get that there's been, delays, and I'm sure Mr. Laystrom and Mr. Keller and Mr. Furr are all going to say it. Mayor Furr, I apologize, are all going to say that. But if we're really going to talk about real work here, and this is me taking myself outside of the fiefdom of Coconut Creek and my positions there, we have to all be partners in this. And if we're talking about expansions and we're talking about possibly other waste streams going there, that's a real conversation. And the fact that this has kind of gone on without, we didn't even get county updates on the landfill expansion until 3 months ago, just because at the time Member Ryan asked for it. So my request is that there's consensus to have Mayor Ryan pen a letter on behalf of the Executive Committee of the Solid Waste Authority of Broward County.
Thank you, Member Rydell. Just to clarify a question, the limitation that would go forward after the termination of the 27, I think you said it was, is it residual C&D bulk and veg, or is it just residual C&D, or is it C&D without any processing for recyclability? Do you know?
My understanding is what hits Monarch Hill is C&D that's already been processed. They have a processing plant across the street where they cull out wood, usable concrete, metals, and so it would just be the residual C&D and bulky weight, the stuff that they could not parse through.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. Member Rydell.
One last point, and I'm curious to hear from Mayor Furr. If you remember last month when we were here, we had a pretty wonderful waste stream study. We got no data from Monarch Hill. So just I'll let that resonate for a second. So we had a waste stream study of where all our garbage is going, with one non-participant who's the biggest participant in the room asking us all just to kind of believe it. So that's why I'm just asking for some more time, so there can be real substantive conversations with the members of this board, with SCS as a resource, not taking tools outside of the toolbox we're looking at, because that's really what it is. We're limiting the tools on an asset. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
The calls for consensus. So I'm asking if there's a majority vote of this executive committee for Mayor Ryan to pen a letter on behalf of this board.
We'll interpret that as a motion, and we'll await a second if there's a move forward on that. I want to just clarify one issue. For the report last month, to be clear, our consultant did try to get the information, but was not permitted to do so under a variety of conditions, apparently. All right, let me move to Member Furr. Was there a second, by the way? Did I hear? No. Okay, Member Furr.
I'll second the motion.
All right, Member Ryan, Member Furr.
Thanks. I would oppose that, and for a couple of reasons. One, what is being taken out of the waste stream, and this is something I think this board has been looking at since its inception, is taking the organics out of the waste stream for good reason. We all know that that's emanating all the greenhouse gases. For us to do that is what we have been trying to do all over the place. It will require source separation. And we've talked about what the school board could do, what the airport could do, or the seaport. This is something I think all of us have been trying to get to. So I don't, in the end, and the other part of that is the surrounding communities have complained about odor. They've complained about smell, all those things. This takes that away, because what you're doing is taking the organics, which is the smelly part of it. Well, for the most part. I mean, unless drywall and things like that, it might have an odor, but you're taking the real stinky part out. So I think the county's doing the right thing here. County is, at this point, responsible for disposal. And until this board gets through all of these things, the county has to decide these things. That Monarch Hill is also at a point where if there's further delay, you're probably going to have, what we've heard is that their capacity is getting limited, and that the part that is doing mitigation of the gas, instead of being able to use the part that we would be giving them with the extra area for that, they would have to take the gas mitigation part out. I don't want to see that. This really needs to get done now. It doesn't make sense to be delaying this. And then, do you want to wait till August? And at that point, we're gonna lose all kind of possibility of doing this. This is, to me, groundbreaking, what the county's doing. To be able to start taking the organics and having them composted up in Okeechobee. No, I don't see any other landfills doing this. And everything that has been talked about in this committee, from zero waste, how do you get to zero waste? By doing what we're doing. It makes sense to go forward with this. And I know everybody hasn't understood exactly what this process is. But this is groundbreaking, and we should continue to go this way.
Thank you, Member Furr. Just a couple of points. What I would note is that with respect to it being groundbreaking and moving forward on source separation, it's something we need. They're waiting 2 years to do it. They're not doing it now. Could have been done. And there is an issue there. Perhaps the county in its negotiations could say start immediately, start in 2025. Second, we've asked for the executive director to be part of those discussions to understand what in real time is being discussed. We've not had that. I appreciate the county providing updates, but we've not been able to sit in on these discussions, and I've raised repeatedly prior to being chair that this is a process that should have incorporated and should incorporate the guidance of this group, the work that's being done by this group before decisions made, and I don't see the exigency in the next 6 months that this needs to be done right away. And I'd finally end with this, that the dismantling of the boilers there, now creating a separate exigency that we don't have the capacity in the county is an issue that is worthy of some discussion and debate. But I would note that I just don't see why this has to be done this month as opposed to in 6 months, and that's just my personal view. Member Shuham? Member Rydell?
The last point I'll make is there's two prongs to this, just so everyone's just crystal clear on it. There's a height and there's a width expansion in terms of a land use. The entity's asking for both now. So essentially they're moving and while me and Mayor Furr could disagree philosophically on it, there's no need for both. So even if there was an argument to even legitimately be made of saying, okay, we need a little more for a life expectancy thing, there's no need for both right now in any world we live in. But I'll leave it at that, and I hope this board gives consensus to our chair.
All right.
2 or 3 hours talking about all the questions that Mayor Rydell brought up, transaction, all the things that we're providing to the county. 8 hours to go through that, and we're happy to do it. We've been happy to do it. That got to for us to have
I know, that's right. So no, hang on, before you step forward, hang on. Hang on. Out of courtesy, Mr. Lacer, I've known you many, many years. It's the only reason I didn't stop you. That I want to be clear that we don't allow folks to stand up and simply, there's a lot of folks here who would like to comment on all of this right away. I see Mr. Lasky raising his hand and he would like to stand from the gallery as well. I appreciate, then we can certainly do that. We'd ask the county to delay it and then we can have a public hearing on it. That would work perfectly. Thank you, Mr. Lacer. All right, any further discussion? Member Wright, please.
I'll be quick. There are two components to this. There is the height, then there is this extra, I think it's 30 acres, or was it 26? 26 acres. What I'm most concerned about is those 26 acres, to be honest with you, because that's where if we need to put some sort of additional facility or something that it can really, that's property that could be very beneficial to us. And I think that absolutely should be delayed for the 6 months.
Okay. Any further, Member Shuham?
I would like. That's the question I have for you. I appreciate the need to push getting the organics out. I also feel, to Commissioner Rydell's point, whatever the limitations are on the landfill, that will be part of the master plan. So to put that constraint in place, I think forces something good, which forces the compostable component. But I do agree with Mayor Bright Cruz about that 26 acres. So what is your sense of a letter on allowing the organics to cease, but bifurcating the 26 acre issue?
The county and Waste Management has been working hand in hand. This is kind of a package deal, so to speak. The 24 acres is a land use deal. The other part is a variance. The land use deal has been in front of the county for, I want to say, 4 years. And that has been, they have their right to be heard. And we've kind of delayed. And we finally said, okay, you have your right to be heard. We've heard it. We've even continued it up to to January. that needs to be heard. The part of that though is that I don't think I can't speak for my fellow commissioners. I don't think there's part of accepting that land use is we want to get to this part of no organics. We want to get there, but I don't know if we get there without doing that other part. I think they go hand in hand.
As part of the negotiation.
Yeah, it's not quid pro quo, but it's one of those things that we're looking at this holistically. It's not just separating it out. It's been looked at from, and lots of, they have given a lot of voluntary terms of the agreement that have been looked at through our department, and we've held their feet to the fire on a whole lot of issues. It is a long negotiated look. They go hand in hand. It's hard to divide them. I don't think they can be divided.
Member Bright Cruz, still up? Okay. Any further discussion on side? We have other items to consider. Go ahead and call the question on the motion.
Okay, one thing.
Yes, sir. Vice Chair.
I do have a question. I guess we can look at something like this, even though it wasn't on the agenda. But I do think this is something that normally should be agended. When we're bringing something up like this, this is a big request. You would think that this would be on the agenda ahead of time.
I would just note that previously this executive committee directed myself to send a letter to the school board as a liaison. I don't believe there was at that time an agenda item that said have the chair send a letter. We discussed it in Senate. I think this is an administrative matter. But I think to Vice Mayor Member Furr's point, I would turn to Mr. Cole.
Right. Well, it is on the agenda, county update. So it's not on the agenda at all. But beyond that, we have no specific rule that prohibits us from adding things and discussing them and voting on them.
Okay. Any further discussion on the item? Call the question.
Chair Ryan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Furr,
No.
Member Shuham,
Yes.
Member Horland.
Yes.
Member Mateo Bowen,
Yes.
Member Dunn,
Yes.
Member Rydell,
Yes.
Member AJ Ryan,
Yes.
Member Bright Cruz.
I'm sorry, Member Bright Cruz doesn't get to vote today. I think AJ Ryan is here oh wait, I'm sorry. We have Scott Newton is not here. Okay,
Yeah,
yes,
that's
he can vote. I'm sorry.
All right. The motion passes 8-1. All right. Member Mateo Bowen's presentation on Copenhagen, visit to Copenhagen.
Order. We put Jordan on the audit committee. I'm going back in the agenda. I apologize because Steve just said to me he couldn't be on because he's an alternate. Jordan's an alternate.
Oh, that's a good point.
Sorry to roll it back on everybody, but I just caught that.
Right, Jordan can't be on either.
That's fantastic. Did he call you to tell you that?
No, but I picked up on it from the reorg meeting.
Yeah, Scott.
Okay,
Mr.
so
Mead.
let's go back and recall the item. We're recalling the item of the SWA annual audit, replacement of 3 members standing. We first need a motion to withdraw the appointments. Motion by Member Dunn, seconded by, I'll give Member Rydell the credit for that one. Anyone opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now do we have a motion on the slate for the audit committee?
I nominate Scott Newton. Second.
Along with?
Henry Mead.
Rydell, Horland, and
Right. All right, so we have a motion by Member Shuham. Do we have a second? Second by Member Horland. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. You saved Jordan. Well done, sir. Well done. All right.
Your words.
May I, Mr. Chair?
I apologize about pushing to the end.
No worries. If it's okay with you and my members, if I can present from here.
Yeah.
All right. All right, everyone. Good morning. Again, I am Nancy Mateo Bowen, and I am speaking from a voice of an environmental scientist, an environmental social justice activist, as well as a member of this executive committee. I had the privilege of attending a sustainability delegation, first of its kind to Copenhagen last spring. So with that being said, I am going to tell you what we will be talking about, why this is important, Copenhagen's waste management system, best practices in waste reduction, innovative technology in waste management, incineration, a key focus of this trip, public engagement and education, policy framework and regulation, collaboration with stakeholders, measuring success, key performance indicators, challenge faced in implementation, recommendations for Broward County, and conclusion, key takeaways and next steps. Next. So this particular trip was important because it is a way for us to implement some of the best practices in Europe, especially in Copenhagen, that has been a leader in Europe to implement those practices here in Broward County. And so really want to talk about the objectives, what they're doing right and what we're not doing right. And then the importance of solid waste management next, waste reduction. So Copenhagen has a really unique system. So what they do is they truly invest in a circular economy, something that we do not have here. And in order for us to ensure that very minimal goes into a waste to energy incinerator is to ensure that we create an economy where we are able to pull those organics, upcycle, and do all of the things that they're doing correctly. Some key components is some curbside collection, recycling centers that we do not have here in Broward County, a waste to energy plant, which is the last resort, but it is something that helps them. And within their waste to management incinerator, they are able to capture the carbon. They have a very sophisticated technology where we capture and really limit the pollution that goes into the atmosphere. And with that captured carbon, they are able to resell it and really support the local agriculture community to implement that nutrient back into the soil, something that I think would be very helpful here in South Florida. In comparison to Broward County, we really emphasize on using our landfill, and that is something that we here have been discussing as of late, and it has been a one-sided conversation, but we do understand that it is a problem here in Broward, as we are all here to address it. And so what I recommend, next, is best practice in waste reduction. And so that is segregating our waste, and that is done through both the household and in commercial levels. And then directing this unusable or things that cannot be upcycled into a waste incinerator. Recycling initiatives. Within Copenhagen, it is frowned upon if you do not recycle correctly, and you are penalized, something that we do not do here, right? If you do not recycle properly, you are fined and you are held accountable. There are many ways for you to be educated. It is very similar to who here was growing up in the 90s, where we all remember those tobacco commercials. You knew them, you saw them every day, you heard them. Something very similar in Copenhagen. Everywhere you go, there is a component on how to recycle properly and how to do it well. And there are bins up front, and it's encouraged. There's recycling centers. It is something that is actually praised. And as a result here, where we dump everything in our trash, out of sight, out of mind. Community is very, very involved, from HOAs to their schools to business communities, and they are incentivized, something that we here in Broward County should really look into doing more of. Next. So technology. I know this is a hot button issue, which is waste to energy incineration. Again, this is not the first result. They have a robust composting program. They have a robust recycling, and they have a robust circular economy program, things that we do not have here. I would be remiss if I said, yes, the first thing we need to do is burn all our trash. We need to encompass all of those components to make sure that we're reducing what goes into this incinerator. That should be our last resort. But in order to get there, we have to make sure that all these other entities exist and there's a foundation for them. And there's an advanced recycling technologies. They utilize AI, they utilize robotics, and it is very sophisticated in sorting out. I had the pleasure of attending a recycling center. We have so many unutilized strip malls that we can convert to recycling centers. And what you will see when you walk is a section for glass, which is broken down and is converted to sand, and it's used as a filler. Then you have aluminum, you have wood, and you have portions on the outside where they use reclaimed wood as mulch and all the other things that folks can come and use and other businesses can use to either for their construction projects or their home projects to do that. And then they have a smart waste management system. They are able to use their smartphones to calculate how much pounds of trash they are producing. And that is a way for them to decrease the amount that they put into their trash. I'm trying to go as quickly as possible. Next
just
slide.
as we get there, obviously we had a time certain of 11. Do we have a motion to extend? And how long would you need? Okay, we have a motion and a second. How long do you think you need?
I need about 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, perfect. So we'll do
Perfect.
15. We have other items we'll have to move. I understand, but we may not get to that today, so.
Next is, this is the key focus, the incineration. A key focus of this trip, I had the opportunity to actually go in, see the inside of this. And one of the barriers, which I will speak to later on, is the NIMBYism. This is something that we experience here in South Florida, not in my backyard. So what they were able to do is create an incinerator, but also embrace within the community. This incinerator has everything that you can imagine in terms of a cafe on the roof. You can go sleighing during any time of the year. You can go hiking up on the side. You can do mountain climbing. It is a recreational site. And you have to pay to use these facilities. The amenities actually support the neighboring communities around them. So this is a way for us to say, hey, we are incentivizing you to have this incinerator in your community, and you get the proceeds coming back into your community. And with that being said, the carbon capture, very, because of the technology, very little pollution is escapes this incinerator. With that being said, that is because there are policies implemented and it is very stringent. The minute a overage of pollution goes into the atmosphere, this incineration site is held accountable and is fined lots of money. And so they will continue to ensure that these dosages are limited and making sure that they limit their pollution into the atmosphere. And they are, speaking to the public comment earlier, there are case studies from Copenhagen that I will include in the white paper to help support how the new technologies have assisted in decreasing pollution into the atmosphere. I'm not saying that it's 100% no pollution, but it is a guaranteed very high limit of pollution into the community. Public education, as I mentioned before, everyone, all ages are included in the very aspect of this to ensure that everyone understands how to recycle properly. This is the foundation. If you are unable to sort, you are unable to do this correctly. Next, policy framework and regulation. That's a photo I took while I was there. All you need is a less of everything. That is something that they also encourage. Overconsumption, really encouraging not to do that. Everywhere you go, there's a consignment store. They are upcycling. They are reusing things. They're repurposing things. There are government policies. Single-use plastics is something that is banned there. It's something I think that we need to encourage here as well. Regulatory support. their regulations is very stringent. There are heavy fines when you do not comply with this, from a local level all the way to a federal level. And then there are incentives for waste management. Businesses are given, they are incentivized when they participate. And I know you hear dollar signs, but it is more so like a tax break on their taxes, making sure their businesses are able to operate longer, et cetera. Other ways to incentivize our small businesses. Next. Collaboration with stakeholders. This is something we're already doing here, but I think we can beef it up just a little bit, right? In terms of making sure that we are delegating these tasks to the already community-based organizations that we are working with. We have the Sierra Club, we have League of Women Voters, who do a great job already. So let's give them the tools to amplify that message up and down the county. Next. Okay, measure of success. They track their consumption. There are barriers, and that is NIMBYism, and there are also funding issues. That's why they create other alternatives to incentivize small businesses and the community. Next. Recommendations for Broward County. Number one, really invest in circular economy. Let's use our strip malls to create recycling centers and then have our waste management companies go there and then be able to do what they do with our recyclables. And I think that will generate a new economy for us. If we do decide to go on the track of a updated new technology incinerator, really look into the capturing of carbon and ensuring that we are supporting our agriculture community, enhancing public engagement, really leveraging the stakeholders we're already working with. Next. Key next steps. I am asking for us to really look deeply into these various technologies that are used throughout Europe, and let us be a model, a leader that we already are. I know we have an amazing resilience community here, but let's be at the forefront on a national level. Actionable steps. Circular economy, making sure that we are composting, making sure that we are able to decrease our contamination with recycling. And lastly, encourage future collaboration opportunities. I am in constant conversation with the incineration leadership there. I'm happy to get them on a Zoom and talk to them how they use AI, robotics, and all of the great technologies that they're already using. And then lastly, I also want to speak to the comments that were made earlier. I do understand that this is an issue, and this is something that we all don't take lightly. But if we don't do anything about this landfill crisis, it is an environmental justice issue. We are going to continue to put our residents in harm's way, whether that is air pollutants, water quality issues. So I think it's super important to act now and not be afraid of progressing. Waste to energy is not something that needs to be bad. I went into this trip thinking that I do not like waste energy, and going there and seeing the advanced technology really switched my mindset. So I encourage you all to have an open mind and really take advantage of the new technologies. And thank you, Mr. Chair. That's my presentation.
All you need is less of everything. Well done. Thank you, Member Matera-Bowen. Any comments from Member Bright Cruz and Member Shuham?
Yeah. Thank you for that presentation. It is impressive what the technology has done these days. And the circular economy that you're talking about is critical. And I think that's one of our biggest challenges, is to getting that education and just get that mindset that you described to us, get that out there, because that's the key to our success, no matter what plan we choose. As far as the incineration itself, to me, there's a fatal flaw with incineration, and that's financial. And they're experiencing that there. They don't have enough waste to make it work there. They're actually importing waste from the EU so that they don't go bankrupt, frankly. And frankly, we ran into that same issue. We don't need to go to Europe to see that. We ran into that with Wheelabrator, right? We saw the exact same thing where there were lower cost alternatives, and more different communities started backing out and doing landfill type things, which we don't want to. I understand. I don't want to go to landfill either, but I think there's better solutions out there. And in fact, to me, the most serious problem with it is that the greater the circular economy becomes, the less that goes to the incinerator, which is good, right? We all want that, but that dooms the incinerator because it's so expensive. It's $1 billion project, and we have to feed that beast. We simply have to feed the beast, otherwise it goes bankrupt. And that's what they found in Denmark, and that's why they have to now import from all around the EU. So they are now generating and creating all those residuals that any incineration creates, and they're stuck with them, and they're getting them from all over you. So I think there's better solutions out there. I think the technology, as you pointed out, is fantastic. It's really improved, but to me, the fatal flaw is the financials of it. And for us to propose to build that type of solution, I think would be very.
Member Mateo-Bone.
Yes, I don't disagree with any of your comments. I am not proposing that we go and create a whole new incinerator. I think that there are incinerators that are currently in function that maybe updating them would be less costly, right? Implementing those technologies, supporting, creating a private-public partnership. I know there's incinerators that are neighboring to us, and we can create a way for us to help them update their technology, but also drive down the cost for us. And so that is where I think that collaboration piece comes into play.
Member Shuham.
First of all, thank you so much. That was amazing. And it's really great to just understand that the plant itself has its own independent income streams. Who knew? But it made me, when you mentioned the idea of strip malls and separating glass and all of that, we've heard here that the hesitation with glass is that the sand, what are people using the sand for? And I'm just curious, or just a comment really for SCS, when we look at that, we know very specifically what the EPA, the Florida DEP is requiring for sand to be used as renourishment on our beaches. And as part of this huge investigation that we're doing, I think we should look to see if there is a way that glass recycled to sand can be done in a way that meets the specifications that we know exist for DEP. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Shuham. Member Vice Mayor Fur.
Thank you. First, I just want to thank you for the presentation, because I think it does give us a broader picture of what waste energy does. I think what you're seeing throughout the country and in the EPA is they are bringing those standards, knowing that that's possible, that the federal standards are now changing to meet those. Because before, the standards were a little bit lower. But now that the technology is up there, you're seeing every waste energy plant in the country is going to have to get up there. Palm Beach is demolishing one of their plants, from my understanding, because they think it's actually cheaper to not necessarily cheaper, but in the long run, it makes more sense to just rebuild to that technology. I think it gives us all some pause, and a little bit of hope in terms of knowing that if we did have to do something like that, that it's not as bad as everybody tries to make it out to be.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, may I? Thank you so much, Mayor Fur. I do think that your comments are important. And I want to reiterate that the first reaction is not going to a waste incineration. But in order for us to do this correctly, we need to start building a foundation to all the other things that can work. And this would be the last resort. I'm just trying to bring a fresh perspective to everyone that the waste to energy is not the big bad boogeyman, and that there are regulations in place to ensure that we still can produce clean air and it not in fact impact our neighboring communities. I think circular economy is the first step that we need to go. We have construction and people out there who are willing to invest in this type of business. And then we have underutilized areas within Broward County that we can create recycling centers that can help really decrease contamination and the things that are going into our landfill.
Right.
Vice Chair Member Fur.
Just when we think about the actual math of this, how much we actually have, and I know our goal here is to try to get to 75% recycling. And to your point, it still leaves 1.5 million tons of stuff that we have to deal with. And currently our waste to energy plant accepts 780,000 tons. That means it's still 780,000 tons that has to be dealt with somehow. And when that other incinerator went offline, that's where that would have gone. And right now, all that stuff's being landfilled north of us in ways that we would prefer probably not. So it's something to think about.
Thank you. Member Dunn. Microphone. Thank you.
That would help, wouldn't it? Thank you, Member Mateo Bowen, for the presentation. Through the Executive Director, could you please share a copy? Thank you.
Okay. Member Ryan.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I think she's bringing up one of the hard truths that we're going to have to face about possibly building a new incinerator, another incinerator, upgrading incinerator in the county. So I appreciate your research on that. My biggest hurdle, as I've said before, is the cultural change. You know, we're certainly not Europe. It's very hard to change the culture. I spoke to the mayor of New Orleans, Latoya Johnson, I think is her name, but she's the mayor of New Orleans, and she said, look, on Mardi Gras, everybody throws garbage all over the place, and no matter what we do or try and stop it from happening, it's going to happen. It's just a part of our identity. And you know, with Broward County being double the size of Copenhagen, right? Copenhagen's about 1 million, so we're about 2 million. I think we wouldn't have a problem when it comes to meeting the needs of the new incinerator when it comes to it. But I just wanted to say thank you for that presentation on the new technology and how we could possibly implement it as a SWA board. But like I said, once again, the biggest challenge for me, we could spend an endless amount of money to try and change a culture and still not possibly get it done, you know, because yeah, we could educate children all we want, but children really don't produce as much garbage as their parents do. So when we're talking a 40-year plan, that's when we could start getting into this generational change. But just thinking that we're going to change how everybody acts in the next 5-10 years is kind of wishful thinking, if you ask me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We're at our time limitation. This conversation will continue in the workshop, no doubt. We do have a thermal conversion technologies conversation to have, which can be part of the workshop. I take it a presentation. So any objection to not conducting that today and incorporate that into the workshop by the board? Okay. Any new or old business or informational material that any members wish to share at this time? Members, should have your cards up. No? Member Dunn?
Just want to reconfirm, we're meeting as a committee on the third Fridays of every month. And then we're going to, through the Executive Director, decide on additional dates for workshops. Thank
Correct.
you.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Member Rydell, seconded by Member Ryan. Thank you. Otherwise, we stay here all afternoon. All in favor, say aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.